what other people think of us has a great bearing, not only our success, because you can't achieve a lot if other people aren't interested in working with you or helping you out.
Yeah.
To be respected and valued in relationships that are important to us is what we describe as a fundamental human need. It leads to a more satisfying life. It leads to a physically healthier life, but it also leads to a lot more success. The variables you control, so how you communicate, how you show up, those have to be on point because you're not just simply granted status by birthright. The way that we get status in another person's brain is we show up and we signal to them, hey, I'm really caring and I'm really capable. Status is a resource, just like health is a resource and money is a resource. It sets you up to have good relationships, but what you want to do with that, it can be very different. People's brains associate men with more worthy of respect than women. It's just straight up bias. But the fancy term in status is called ascribed characteristic, meaning you don't control it. It's ascribed to you, but the world has assigned meaning to it.
Before we get into today's conversation, 2 quick things I want to mention. First, the Breadwinners newsletter is on Substack. It's where I put the stuff that doesn't fit in a podcast episode. Think of it as a group chat you didn't know you needed. Real talk about money, childcare, partnership dynamics, and the messy middle of building a life that actually works. No polished advice, just the honest, unfiltered conversation we'd be having over dinner. Feel free to subscribe at wearethebreadwinners.substack.com. Link is also in the show notes below. And second, if you're getting value from these conversations, I need to ask you to do something that makes a real difference. Subscribe and rate the Breadwinners podcast wherever you're listening. And here's why it matters. Every subscription and rating tells the platforms that this content is resonating, which helps us reach more women who are redefining what it means to be a breadwinner and their families and communities. And honestly, it's what allows us to keep producing this show and growing this movement. So hit subscribe, leave a rating if you can, and help us reach the women who need to know they're not alone in this. I want to tell you why today's guest belongs in this conversation and why I think what she's going to share is going to give you something you didn't know you were missing. Today's conversation is about reframing how you think about yourself, how others see you, and how you show up in the world. Alison Fragale has the science. She's an organizational psychologist, professor, and a former McKinsey consultant, and the author of a national bestseller, Likable Badass, How Women Get the Success They Deserve. She spent 20 years studying something that affects every single woman in our community, and frankly, every person in our community. Here's the piece of her research that I found interesting. It's not your title, your salary, or your track record that determines whether you get more. It's your status, how much others respect and value you. It's a complete reframe on how we define status. And that formula for building status, specifically for women, isn't what most of us have been told. But what is more powerful than the research itself is Alison's own story. She started her career at McKinsey and quickly realized she wasn't great at the consulting work itself. What she was extraordinary at, which was getting the most resistant clients to change their minds, turned out to be her entire career. Her biggest professional threat became her biggest career success. That story deeply resonates with this Breadwinners community, and it's the lens which through I want you to hear everything she shares today. Alison is also raising 3 teenagers, which requires a whole other type of daily negotiation, and we'll discuss that too. For all of you breadwinners, she is going to change how you walk into your next meeting. Please welcome Alison Fragale. Alison, welcome to Austin.
I'm so happy to be here.
You just touched down.
I did.
Welcome to South by Southwest also. It's like the craziest time of year here.
I know. I'm kind of here for it, but the introvert in me is actually also terrified.
Wait, I love this. You're coming to town, but you're actually not seeing anybody.
Oh yeah. So yes, I'm speaking tomorrow, but I am truly introverted, and like the whole concept, and even just seeing it on social media, and everyone's like, "I'm posting, I'm gonna be there." I had like virtual anxiety just even looking at it, and so I'm really grateful to actually get to be here. But I think I'm just gonna under leverage it because I just can't handle it.
Well, I want to start with a bit of your backstory because it's a really interesting one. You started your career at McKinsey, but you actually felt like you weren't that great as a consultant, but you had this unique superpower that it feels like untapped the next chapter of what you're doing today. Can you talk a little bit about that juxtaposition of being in the crazy world of consulting and what that superpower was?
Yeah, I went into consulting because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I had a lot of voices in my head saying this was a good job and business and you'll learn a lot and all these things. And I think I could have been good at it. I didn't think the work was that hard, but I just did not like it. It's really hard to excel at something you do not enjoy doing.
Yeah.
But what I did find fascinating was the people dynamics. Consulting's a really weird job, right? Because no one reports to you. You spend all of your time in client service. So you're in someone else's organization, essentially as a visitor, a guest, paid to be there and help. But the other thing is, no one likes you. I mean, they make movies about consultants, right? And how terrible they are, right?
It's true.
So you end up in this situation where no one knows you, no one likes you, no one wants to work with you. And you have to spend a lot of time actually earning people's trust and getting them to like you. And I was naturally always very good at that because inside me, I think I'd always been a psychologist, but I just didn't have any way to pursue that or knowledge to pursue it.
Right.
So I was always really good at thinking about, well, what's that person thinking? Or how would I get that person to influence them or to be on my side. And so that was the part that I was really good at, much better than my senior colleagues who were very much like, we're McKinsey, we're here, we're super smart, we have the slide deck, and you should listen to us. And I was the one who would go and smoke cigarettes with the people on the roof because that's where everyone went to talk about what was really going on. And they're like, you want to come? And I'm like, sure. I don't really smoke cigarettes, but no matter, like I can do this. And I would sit on these little tin cans up on the roof and talk to people. And that I thought I was really good at. So I became like the disarming one. And they were like, Alison can go get them to do whatever it was. So that was the beginning of me starting to think about psychology. One, I was just so profoundly unhappy in my job. And I always say to people that the best job is one that you love and the second best job is one that you hate because you'll be so motivated to understand yourself and your environment and why that doesn't work that you'll learn a lot better. So for me, I started to think, what do I like? And I came back to this idea of psychology. I had never figured out how I was going to monetize that. And so I started to do research, but it's 1998. Okay. And so although the internet exists, we are not, Google searching these things. I had to go to Barnes & Noble and buy a book called Careers in Psychology. And I bought the book and I'm flipping through it. And I come across organizational psychology, which is, spoiler alert, what I do now and have for the past 20 some years. And I see this field and I'm drawn to two things. One is that it's the intersection of business and psychology. So that feels like it fits. And the other was that it was the highest paid of all the different forms of psychology there was. And I was like, oh, maybe I could actually make money doing this. And so that was how that left turn at my quarter life crisis happened.
Okay. So I'm laughing because you talk about smoking cigarettes with people and the disarming approach. It reminds me of the episode of Friends where Rachel works at the fashion company. Oh, yeah. And she doesn't smoke, but she steps outside to be with everyone because that's where everybody is. There really is a behavioral component of that is true in human nature. So, was there a moment where it moved beyond the workplace?
I think that work is life. That's where people spend most of their waking time, okay? So to me, that's never been a big line. I still do spend a lot of time. Most of the people who know me and most of the time I'm standing in front of an audience, it's going to be an audience of people who work for pay. But that's not necessarily because I've chosen that. That's often more because that's who finds me and who comes to me. It's a function of being a business school professor. So I'm still in that world. But no, I mean, being a psychologist it does affect how I see everything, how I see being a parent, how I think about friendships, how I advise people to navigate life. But so I think that for me, the line's always been really fuzzy just because for most people, the work and life distinction is not a sharp one, right? It's just all relationships, all people, and they spill over in all those different ways.
So I'd love to actually go into the next phase of your PhD. What did you expect going in to study for your PhD? What did you study? And what came out of it that you didn't expect?
So I got my PhD at Stanford. I went in very focused on studying negotiation because it was something I understood. I had been doing a lot of negotiation on behalf of my clients at McKinsey. I knew that negotiation was a business skill that sat within this interdisciplinary field of organizational psychology. So I wrote this very strong essay of how I wanted to be a negotiation professor. It very fortunately landed me at Stanford working with a very renowned negotiation professor who's still extremely influential in my life to this day, despite the fact that she's retired. Nevertheless, I went there. That's what I was going to do. I was going to specialize in the study of negotiation. Now that's part of what I do, and I have done that for a while. But I ended up getting really interested in something else that kind of brought us here, which is this idea of status and how much we're respected and regarded by other people. And that I just fell into but it relates to the things we're going to talk about today. When I got to to show up to get my PhD, this woman that I showed up to work with, she was finishing an administrative role as being a dean. And she basically said, I'm really excited to work with you, but I need 6 months to finish this very time-consuming administrative job, so I can't work with you yet. So you need to keep yourself busy and productive. Go find someone else to work with. So basically go knock on all these doors in the building and tell people you're there to work, and whatever they ask you to do, no matter how bad you think it is or how uninteresting it is, ask for nothing in return, just do the work. And I'm like, this is
different professors.
Yes, different professors, her colleagues.
Right.
So I'm just walking up and down these halls. That's my assignment. And it's so dumb. The doors.
The introvert that you are,
yes,
dying inside.
And yes, and the way the Stanford doors for the offices are like 20 feet tall with no windows. They basically say like, smart people are in here thinking smart things. Do not knock on us. But I'm like, here you go. And long story short, I talked to a lot of different faculty, but there was a young professor there at the time, just starting her career, who was doing work in the area of status. And she was like, yeah, I need help. And so I came in and I started working with her. And she's still somebody that, again, I'm also very close with to this day. But it opened my eyes to other things that I cared about and could study. And so that I think about that because it was not a deliberate intellectual decision on my part that this was something I really was passionate about and I wanted to study. It was like, I'm here, I'm supposed to be doing something for somebody give me work. And from that, I found something that actually really inspired me and I love. And then now that's really central to a lot of the work I do with women.
Yeah. I find often, I mean, it's specific, it's relatable for me, is when you open yourself up to anything, the thing falls in your lap.
Absolutely.
It's the mindset of like, I don't know where this is going to take me. And in some way, shape, or form, it ends up finding its way to you.
Yeah. And I do think this is being a psychologist has helped me here because in my research work, I'm an experimentalist. Like we try things and we see what happens. And then if it doesn't work, you switch something else and see what happens. That's the nature of running an experiment. And I have such an experimentalist attitude toward life. And I always coach people to be an experimentalist. Some of the things I've found that have been really generative to my career have really like given me a lot of life, like social media is one. I'm an introvert. I was really resistant to social media because that's just like inviting strangers into your life. And I don't even like the people I know. So I definitely don't want more people in my life. But I actually found once I got on social media as an experiment, my friend was like, just post once. And so I'm like, do something once, right? And you don't have to commit to love it. And then I actually found I loved it because in a weird way, as an introvert, it really serves me because it allows me to put content out in the world to help people, to mentor people, but not have to have conversations and to be able to close my computer and say, I'm enough of that. And like, I can put all of that away. So I actually found that I enjoyed it and it was a fit with my personality, but only because I tried. And so to your point, I do think I tell people, try it 1 time, 2 times, because there can be a little bit of discomfort and growth, but nothing's forever.
Yeah.
And so even same thing with like research. Research can take a while, but it's still not forever. You can do something and then say, that was not for me anymore.
Right.
And move on.
I think that's a really interesting reframing. I interviewed my friend Devin a couple weeks ago who had a 20-year corporate career, very successful, and decided to leave it. And we talked a lot about this mental framing of quitting, the word quit, and how jarring it is and how much guilt comes around that and the responsibilities you have. But even she told a story about quitting when she was younger. And she's like, well, I can't quit. It's like society teaches you can't quit. You have to be resilient and push through it. But this is really interesting reframing of like, well, what if you treated it as an experiment?
That's right.
And when you feel like it's not working, move on to the next experiment.
That's right. Try something else. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And if people haven't read it, Annie Duke's book, Quit, is an amazing read on that topic.
Oh, cool. I'll put that in the show notes for people.
Most people quit too late.
It is. I mean, I talked about it with Devin. It's like, you try and teach your kids resilience. And my 19-year-old, we always say, like, give it a year. You have to try. If you don't like it, keep pushing through. But I don't know. Maybe I'm going back on my words. And now maybe it's important to reframe how you think about where you spend your time and what you use for tests. Like, what are your tests?
Yes. Well, I do think getting outside feedback can be helpful because one of my favorite quotes comes from this HBO series that was from way back called In Treatment with Gabriel Byrne. He was a 2 therapists, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great series. But one of the things he was talking about was he was a therapist and they also showed him seeing his own therapist. And she would say stuff that would give him insight. And he would be like, I can't believe, like, I'm a therapist. I couldn't figure this out till you said it. And Diane Farr, who played the therapist, she said, you can't look at yourself through your own binoculars.
All right. Well, I want to dive into this idea of what you've studied. So this professor that you stumbled upon was studying this idea of status. Was it status in the workplace? Talk to me a little bit about what she was studying and how you became interested in this idea of status and power.
Yeah, she was studying, she's not really studying in the workplace specifically, but she was just studying the relationship between emotions and status, and how our feelings of status can affect how status can affect how we feel, and how expressions of emotions can actually affect what people think of us. So before I ever came along, she did a really cool study back in the days when Bill Clinton was the Bill Clinton Monica Lewinsky incident.
Yeah.
And she clipped two different clips of Bill Clinton talking about the allegations against him. And one of them was the angry, like, I did not have sex with that woman. And the other was a much more sad, kind of contrite version that was also something he had done. And what she found was that when people saw expressions of anger, in this case, Bill Clinton's expressions of anger, they thought that he was much more worthy of status or respect. They were much less likely to think he should be impeached and these kinds of things. So the idea was that expressions of anger would signal, like, I'm not blameworthy, I didn't do anything wrong, and therefore people would have more respect for that than when people express sadness. And it was more generally about the fact that we're drawing inferences about respect from all kinds of cues that people send, including their emotional expressions. And so I don't do that work on emotions, but the idea of status, which is how much we are respected and regarded by other people, which is what that is really central to my work. So these are judgments that sit in other people's heads, but they matter a lot. So certainly if you're an elected official, what other people think of you matters, because that's how they decide they're going to vote. But even for the rest of us who are never going to be politicians, what other people think of us has a great bearing on not only our success, because you can't achieve a lot if other people aren't interested in working with you or helping you out, but also in and of itself, to be respected and valued in relationships that are important to us is what we describe as a fundamental human need. It drives us, and it leads to a more satisfying life. It leads to a physically healthier life, but it also leads to a lot more success. And so that's the core of what I study now, and a lot of what I talk about that is not a gendered phenomenon. All human beings seek respect, but I spend a lot of time talking about the implications of that for women, because women, in comparison to men, will, for the exact same signals and accomplishments, will often get less respect from their audience. And so,
why is that?
It's because gender is what we call an ascribed status characteristic. So when people make judgments about how much they respect a person, they're paying attention to all kinds of stuff, including noise, like sources of bias. So we pay attention to gender, and all other things being equal, people's brains associate men with more worthy of respect than women. It's just straight up bias. But the fancy term in status is called ascribed characteristic, meaning you don't control it. It's ascribed to you, but the world has assigned meaning to it. And so what it means is that for lots of people, women being one category, that we start a bit behind in terms of the respect that we're immediately afforded. And therefore, we have to think about how we show up more carefully to be able to get that status. And so that's the bad news, because that's bias. The good news is that when we look at research, how someone shows up in their interaction actually is a bigger determinant of how much respect they'll get than any of these other characteristics that they don't control. So a woman, and we know many highly respected women, we respect them, other people respect them. You can be just as respected or more respected than a man, but what needs to happen is that the variables you control, so how you communicate, how you show up, those have to be on point, because you're not just simply granted status by birthright. You have to think about how you show up. So that's a lot of what I spend time talking to people about, is what are the things you actively can control in the way that you show up in the world that will get you the status that you deserve, while But make that authentic and easy, because nobody has time for a long to-do list.
Yeah.
And nobody deserves to have to act in a way that doesn't feel in line with themselves.
Okay, so that leads to the next question is exactly that. I'd like to dig into some tangible examples of showing up. And then how do you do that authentically? Because you don't want it to feel like work, right?
Sure.
It's more tapping into your true self.
That's right.
So help us understand that a little bit.
When people decide that they respect another human being, they're always paying attention to the same two things. And they're the same things we pay attention to. What first thing we try to figure out about a person is, are they friend or are they foe? Like, are they going to make our life better or worse? We obviously respect people who we think are going to make our lives better. So I write a book called Likable Badass. Though that term, while hopefully catchy, is actually a reference to these two things we're paying attention to. This first one is friend or foe. Do you care about people other than yourself? Not only are you likable, but are you warm, helpful, sincere, giving? People who have those qualities make other people's lives better.
Yeah.
We value that. Second thing we need to figure out is, I know your intentions are good. You want to be helpful, but can I rely on you? Are you capable? So badass. Are you capable, competent, organized, persistent? Those qualities convince me that you're going to deliver results. So the way that we get status in another person's brain is we show up and we signal to them, hey, I'm really caring and I'm really capable. And when people believe those two things about someone, they respect them. That's what we want. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, here's the part that's super authentic. The most caring, capable people I know are women. So if you are caring and you are capable, then showing that is a super authentic act. So it's just communication. And then how do we do it? Well, we have to also do it in ways that feel easy and comfortable. Now that I know what I know as a psychologist, what do we know? First, people are considered the experts on themselves. People will generally take what we say about ourselves at face value, which means that's one of the reasons self-promotion does work, is because people don't know everything you're doing. And so you tell them you've done something, they're like, okay. But it also is why when we self-deprecate and we talk badly about ourselves, it can be really harmful to our stories, because people are seen, if you mock your intelligence, you're seen as less intelligent. You mock your attractiveness, you're seen as less attractive. So,
and women are more prone to be self-deprecating.
Myself included. I am a lifelong self-deprecator, and it's a very warm behavior. So a lot of people do it because it's endearing,
right? But
it is at the threat of that other dimension that we care about, which is our capability. So we do have to be strong storytellers, and I say this again as a lifelong self-deprecator. So much of what people know about us comes from us, right? Meaning, so you have a great podcast. How do people know that? Well, a lot of it's from you. Like, they've seen an episode. Yeah. They've heard you talk about it. So people learn things about us from us. So we cannot, we have to be a good channel of communication. So to your question about, like, what are the easy ways to do this is we have to find ways to share the things that we are doing in the world, right? I mean, when you talk about this podcast, for example, you could see it as a self-promoting, selfish act, or you could say, I bring amazing guests on here who actually help people really understand a lot of, like, great tips and tools that'll help them live better. Yeah. And people wouldn't know that I could help them that way if they didn't know I was doing this. Right. So we have to flip the idea of talking about ourselves from being solely about look at me to this is how people learn the skills I have and where I can be of service. But talking about ourselves is one of the most simple ways that people will understand you're really caring and you're really capable. So, examples. When someone comes up to you, as they do every day, and says, what's up? What's new? How's it going? How's work? They ask you one of these questions, right? They're essentially glorified hellos. And we typically respond with, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm busy, something like that, right? You don't say much. There's no opportunity to, like, convey any interesting information. You throw the opportunity away. That person has invited you to talk about yourself. Now, when someone says, how are you? Nobody wants a 30-minute response, right? So they're not interested in your resume dump. Yeah. But you can say something quick. So I'll give you a story. I have an event in Chicago, which is where I live. I invite a bunch of people, including a guy that I do not know very well, but I like him. He comes in and I just thoughtlessly say to him, oh, hey, thanks for coming. How was your day? With no intention, right? Just, again, glorified hello. But rather than say fine, good, or busy, he just looks right back at me and he goes, Alison, I had the best day today. And that was all it took.
Yeah.
And he made me curious.
Yep.
And you're probably wondering, why was his day so good? Well, guess what? I can tell you, because I asked him. And I was like, well, how was your day good? And then he tells me a story that he had lunch with a guy that he had met on LinkedIn, and that the guy had signed up to be a client. And in that short story, I learned that my friend I had invited was in wealth management. So I think in one sentence, he was basically able to like hit on, I'm really capable. I turned a stranger to a paying client in one lunch. But then he added a second piece, which was hitting on the piece of being very caring. He said, I'm feeling really inspired because this guy that is signed on to work with me, he obviously has wealth, but now that he's built his wealth, what he wants to do with it is literally change the world. And so I'm feeling really grateful because by being able to advise him, I'm helping him maximize his impact. And I think it's such a great example because what he did well was he just took an opportunity for connection and turned it into curiosity.
Yeah.
And then once someone's asking you questions, you're able to say a lot more about what you're doing without it looking like it's self-promoting. You're just answering questions. Yeah. So that's one thing I encourage people to do is the next time someone says, like, how's it going? Have something to say. You could say, like, oh, I just recorded a podcast today or something like that. Chances are people are going to inquire. And so I coach a lot of women who say, like, I don't even know how to talk about all the things I'm doing. I talked to one woman who was taking photographs at an event, and she said, this is my volunteer work. And at work, I think it's nice for people to know I do these things, but it's not relevant to how I'm at work. So I don't know how to say this. I said, well, you're going to come in on Monday and someone's going to say, how was your weekend? Even if they didn't care how your weekend was, they're going to say it. And you could say, I'm tired. I took 463 photos. I guarantee you one person is going to say, of what?
Right.
And once they say, of what, you're going to have a natural opportunity to ask them. So that's an example of something that we can do that's authentic. You don't have to give a full bio drop or life story, but share a little bit about what you're doing. Yeah. People get genuinely curious, and then it's a conversation about what's happening. Yeah. And that's how we get to talk about ourselves.
Yeah.
And so those simple things, one of the things is I get to see women who feel like they struggle, even though they're incredibly pedigreed. I also get to see women who feel like they're just crushing it and they're widely respected and beloved by people who know them. And when I look at the differences, it's not like the people who are so widely respected have different degrees, different skills, different titles. They're just really masters at doing these simple kinds of things well, like figuring out how to talk about themselves in ways that aren't off-putting, in ways that convey their value, using their talents to help others. So like this is another one that I think is such a powerful one if you can find efficient hacks to do it. So the second you use your unique skills to make someone else's life better, you have set the stage to be respected by them because your skill says you're capable. And the fact that you've done it in generosity to them says you're really caring. So how many, coffee meetings have we all had in the course of our lives? Like too many to count. And one thing I always say to people is like, stop buying coffees, start making intros. Because when you go to have a coffee with someone that's just an acquaintance, most of the time you might offer to buy their coffee. And why are you doing that? You're doing it because you want to seem like you're a nice person. It's the nice thing to do, which it is. The problem is it gives you nothing on the other dimension of being capable because anyone in the line could buy the coffee. But you can buy the coffee or not. But if you think about in that same intro meeting, when you're learning about someone's life, you could think about who do I know that person might benefit from meeting? Yeah. And it doesn't cost you any money. But when you make that intro with just as little effort as buying the coffee, you're able to say, hey, I have something uniquely valuable that the person sitting next to me in Starbucks doesn't have. Only I have that intro and I'm going to make it for you. So that's an example of leaning into things that you might enjoy doing, that you have skills at, that are easy for you, hard for other people, but have value. And intros to me are my favorite because literally anyone can make them.
Yeah.
Everybody.
It's my favorite thing to do.
Yes.
Like I love making connections.
I do too. The introvert in me loves it because they have to talk. I don't have to talk. I just set them up and I'm like, here you go, right? I love being a connector. But once I started to recognize, again, the psychologist in me, once I started to recognize, wait, an introduction is such a 2-minute way to add value to someone else's life that it's a great status building move. Once I labeled it, then I was actually able to do it even more intentionally because I was naturally doing it. And now almost always when I'm listening to a stranger, as I'm listening to them, I'm like, who do I know that I can introduce them to? It's like going through my head.
It's my favorite thing. Yeah. It's actually been one of the most amazing things about this community. And it goes back to this, this idea of defining caring. The way that we define the women who really respond well to the Breadwinners community is this one criteria is you give more than you take.
Yes.
And that's it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your status, meaning your title. Your status means how do you show up with other people? And I think that's a really important reframing. It's interesting because when I was researching you and the book and I first saw status, I was like, oh man, I don't want to talk about status. Like we actually intentionally don't talk about status with the Breadwinners because we feel like it really doesn't define you, but you're redefining what status is.
Yeah, and if you look in the dictionary for the definitions of status, right, there's prestige in there, which often like what people think about, but there's respect. And so it is one of the definitions. It's not just the way we tend to use the term in everyday conversation. So I'm trying to reclaim it because if we can't label it, then we can't act with intention about it. And for a lot of people, like when I talk about the intros, they're like, oh, now this thing I've always been doing in my life and it's really paid off for me. And I could never articulate why it was working. It now makes a lot of sense. So one, that's helpful for you on your own because now once you understand it, you can lean into it. But it also helps you teach to this idea of giving more than you get, meaning there's a lot of, I interviewed a lot of women for my book. I talked to a lot of women in my work, and let's say they're all successful. Some of them have no ability to articulate why they are successful. And if you cannot articulate what you've done and break it down for somebody, it dies with you. You can never teach anybody. So the other thing I hope...
Why? Sorry, I want to hit on that for a second.
Yeah.
Why aren't they able to articulate it?
Because when we think about stages of competence, there's, so like first level would be unconscious incompetence, meaning you're terrible at something and you're so bad you have no idea. So think like people on American Idol who clearly you can tell they can't sing, but they do not know.
Right.
Okay, that's that. And then as you get a little better at something, now you're like consciously incompetent. So now you're a bad singer, but you know you're a bad singer and you're trying to get better. And then you can get better and you can now produce like sing on pitch, but you have to really think about it and you have to have like the perfect backing vocals.
Yep.
And then you get to a level, which is where most successful people are, which is called unconscious competence, meaning you're now so good that you can just produce that behavior in your sleep and you don't have to think about it. But there's a next level, okay? And the next level is like back to conscious competence, which is conscious excellence, which is now you're really good, but you can actually good enough you can explain to somebody else how to do it. And for a lot of people, who are successful, they've gotten to that fourth level, but they can't get to that fifth. So my husband, I had this interesting conversation with him once. My husband grew up racing sailboats, and he also grew up playing baseball. And he was a sailing instructor, and he has taught my kids how to sail. He's taught many, many people how to sail. It was only when he became a parent and he tried to teach my sons to throw a baseball, he said, I can throw a baseball quite well. I have absolutely no language to explain. I can see what they're doing wrong, but I cannot talk to them. I keep just saying, do this, and they're not doing it. And then I'm getting angry. And what I said to him was that he had figured out in sailing, like how to break it down and describe it to people in a way that people didn't know how to sail could understand. He couldn't do that with throwing a baseball. So a lot of women, they're like really great at, let's say, promoting themselves and talking about themselves, but they don't have any idea like what they're doing. And so they can't break it down. And so they're talking to somebody who's really fearful about speaking up. Yeah. And they're like, you should just take a chance and just speak up. And that's not actionable advice. So,
and it's not translatable.
Exactly.
Like to your point, meeting people where they are, I think that's a hidden talent. People, you going and smoke, I'm taking it back to your early days. You going back with the people smoking cigarettes, you're meeting people where they are.
That's right.
And I think that's an unlock in this, getting to that fourth level.
But part of it is having a language. So for example, I didn't have the language when I was smoking the cigarettes, but like there is a language for that, which is similarity attraction. The greatest basis of liking and attraction that psychology has ever documented is similarity. We like people who are like us. So if you go to smoke a cigarette and another person says, I don't smoke, that's dissimilarity. But if they go out and sit there with you, now you have something in common. It's not super unique, but now it's a beginning of liking, attraction, a relationship. So sometimes when you label it for somebody, then they can start to do it more. Like, oh, now I understand why the cigarettes worked. And I didn't have to do it just through the cigarettes. In fact, I don't want to smoke a cigarette. I would like to ride the Peloton, but I can make friends by talking about that similarity.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with status, which is part of what I try to do by bringing attention to the word and saying, hey, there's this thing. I don't care if you call it status or not, but it exists. You want to call it respect, that's fine. But this thing is something all human beings seek, and there's actually a science to getting it. And if we can break down the science, then you'll be better prepared to look at something and say, oh, I know why that works now. I can see it. And that's what I've been able to do, is to see things that women or people were doing and say, that's actually a really good technique. We should all be doing more of that. And that is also helpful for people who are very far along in their lives and careers and have been met with a lot of success, is they do want to help people and they do want to teach.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to break it down really simply of, here's how I've done this. And I think having that language is very helpful for that. So I'm trying to make the word status less taboo.
I love this. It's completely reframed it for me.
Good.
I have to tell you,
Good.
I was like, oh man, I don't want to talk about status. I do think it comes, and actually, I'm going to reframe this question because it doesn't matter what I think. I'm very curious to hear through your research, the famous quote, it's not about what you've done, it's about how you've made people feel. I think that's a huge component of this.
Absolutely. Because what you've done, right, that would be like your objective. Am I capable, right? Am I caring? But if someone doesn't feel that way, it doesn't matter. So status is perception. And so you have to navigate that perception. So I'll give you an example. I have resting bitch face. Okay.
Me too.
Okay, great. See, we have so many things. This is it. We already have all these things in common, including everyone can't see it, but including our matching bags that we walked in with, identical bags. So I have resting bitch face. I was born before that was a term. So I lived my whole life with my parents, friends, even strangers on the street saying, what's wrong? And I would be legitimately confused. I don't know why someone's asking me what's wrong. Nothing's wrong. And then sometimes people would say, you have that look on your face. What look? No idea. Okay, so fast forward now, resting bitch face comes out as an article. I can't remember, New York Times or something. And a colleague that I work with sends me the article via email. There is no text of the email. There is no subject line. There is just the article attached.
Just the article.
I get the article. I'm like, what is this? Why is there an attachment and no message? I'm confused. I open it up. I read it. I'm still confused. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, okay. This is my colleague telling me that I am the poster child for resting bitch face.
You are the definition of.
Okay, so now things make sense. Okay, but here's my point about this, which is that how you make people feel. So now I'm aware of the fact that, people are saying I'm not a good smiler. And that's actually correct. So now I try smiling. It physically hurts my face I'm almost feel like right now I'm having like a mini facelift talking to you because I'm trying to be smiley. And it's like, this hurts. Anyway, okay. So, but when we think about it, if someone walks in and they are frowning or scowling, it's not a crazy reaction from the audience to think that person is unhappy, mad, that they did something wrong. So if people are like how I make people feel, if I'm walking around with an expression I don't know I have, I might be making people feel like I don't care, I'm not likable, or I'm mad at them, none of which is true and none of which serves me. And is it, what am I really supposed to say? Like, you shouldn't pay attention to my face. You shouldn't no, human beings pay attention to nonverbal behavior. I'm not going to talk their brains out of that. So now what do I have to do? I have to, one, recognize that the signal I'm sending, the way I'm making somebody feel, is not accurate. And then I have to do one of two things. I either have to change it. In my case, I experimented with that, didn't work. Or I have to work around it and say, okay, I am a really caring person. I'm actually really happy to be here and see you. My face isn't always going to be the best judge. So what do? I'm a good joke teller. I'm good at complimenting people. I'm good with words. I'm not good with smiles. So I have to make sure that I have become, more effusive in like my compliments to people and, my praise and those kind of things over the years. And part of it is my workaround, which is that's genuine too. But I need to convey to people that I am a really friendly, nice person. And I just got off this call the other day because sometimes when you come in as a thought leader or expert, your professor, people don't exactly know what they're going to get. I was on a Zoom call with a client talking about details of an event. And interestingly, I had not yet hung up, but it was about to hang up. And so just as they thought I was off the line, don't worry, it's not bad. They said to each other, she was so nice. But they said it in that way of they didn't know if I was going to be nice, right? Like, who knows what you're going to get when you, and they were like, oh my God, she was so nice. So that's how I want people to feel.
Right.
Like, that was so fun.
Genuine,
because I am nice. But I have to be aware of the signals I send. And so that's an example where sometimes people are sending bad signals. Self-deprecating is a bad signal. And then they're like, wait, people don't think I'm capable. It's like, well, you've been telling everybody, essentially, that you aren't in all these ways? And what do you think that they're going to conclude? So that idea of status is perception. So it exists in the eye of the receiver, not in the mind of the sender.
I have so many notes on this page because there's so many areas that I want to dig into. I keep coming in all of these conversations, I keep coming back to societally people trying to think, I don't care what people think of me. I don't care what people think of me. But we do. Everybody does. Even if you say, I don't care what people think, you do care what people think. And I think this is an important reframing, is to leverage that as a superpower versus it being, oh no, someone's going to think something bad of me.
Yeah. So I think about this a lot, particularly as a parent. So of what is the space between being strategic in managing your status and chasing validation, because you do need to do the former, right? But you don't want to do the latter because it leads to an unhappy life. And I think about this. My 3 kids are boy, girl, middle school girl. Okay,
Oof, middle school girl, so hard.
I mean, there's a reason that's my last child.
It gives me a visceral reaction.
Right?
It's worst 3 years of my life.
Right? It's terrible. And the boys were not as phased, but for
the
her,
girls.
yes. So this idea of things about, so here's what I'd say. Here's what my teenage son often does. I have these conversations with him. He's looking at applying to college, and he's a junior. And I said, look, you don't have the luxury of saying, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. You want to go to college? Guess what you need? You need some recommendations. You need some internships. You aren't going to get those things if people aren't voluntarily excited to work with you. They have to respect you. They have to think you're capable, and they have to think you're going to care about doing a good job. If you don't convince them of those 2 things, you're done. So can't say I don't care what anyone thinks. See how that works out for you in life, right? You're going to be unemployed living in your parents' basement.
Right.
But you don't want to do what my daughter does, which is every time I heard that so-and-so said something bad about me today. And I would say, well, do you know they said something bad about you? Do you think they did? Whatever.
Yeah.
And then I would say, and by the way, honey, in all these years, I was, when did so-and-so come to your school? When did Molly come to your school? Oh, she's been there since kindergarten. You're in 5th grade. I said, honey, I have never heard Molly's name until today. So how good of friends could you possibly be with Molly if at not one point have you spoken of her? So does Molly's opinion of you really critical for your life? And so one thing I say to people as adults or children is, if you start to have the teenage boy, it doesn't matter if you don't like me, forget about it, that's going to be such a recipe for disaster, because we are social creatures. So much of our satisfaction and success is about other people wanting to be in relationships with us. Yeah. People are not going to want to be in a relationship with you. They don't like what you're sending them. Right. So you have to care somewhat. At the same time, that doesn't have to define you. So what I tell people to think about, and I talk about this a bunch in the book, is to think about what do you want your life to look like? What are your professional goals? And to identify those, the more in the future you could go and identify those with clarity, then the better able you are in the present to figure out whose opinion matters and whose doesn't. So let's say you're in a workplace where you actually want to build your career in that workplace and you want to be promoted and advance. If that's what you want, which is not for anyone else to tell you, but you want it, well, guess what? The other people who are there who have more power than you, who are going to give you that promotion, their opinion ends up being pretty important for whether you get the thing you want. So that you should probably have some status in their eyes. Yeah. But if you don't think you're going to stay there, you're not going to do a terrible job at your work, but you could say, that's not as big of an issue because I have a pivot that I'm planning. Yeah. And these relationships externally are actually really important to my pivot. So the more you can decide on your own goals, and that's why I say to my son, college is important to you. So setting yourself up for success in those relationships, you have to be smart about those things. And that starts with, you have to give to those relationships in ways that make people respect you. And in other ones, it never feels good to have someone not like you. But you could say, that's actually not anywhere part of where I'm going. And so I can just push that one aside. And that way it allows us to have some agency in choosing which relationships we invest in. But I think that I don't care, it's a narrative we often feed to our kids, which is where I learned it. Yeah. And I always say to people, no one ever says that to you when you're winning an award. No one, when you get up there to accept, don't care about what people think about you. The people only say it in moments of pain. Yeah. Right? When you're hurt.
You're trying to convince yourself, oh, well, I don't care what other people think.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And so even with my kids, I try to have a slightly, even with my daughter when she's upset, a slightly different narrative, which is, you're amazing. And I see that. And you see that. and she doesn't see it, right? And the question is like, do you care if she sees it?
Yeah.
And if you put your effort into it, you could probably win her over, but is that where you want your effort to go? Or would you rather show all these other people how amazing you are? And that way you can think about like, I choose, like, this is my truth.
Yeah.
And I haven't conveyed it to this person. And then I feel like I can decide what's important to me and not. And
I
so,
I think that's an important nuance. It's a balance between what is in your control. You can't control what other people think.
That's right.
But you can control your actions.
That's right. And you can influence what other people think, but you don't always get it right away.
Right.
Right. Not everybody is won over instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you have to work harder than with certain people than others to convince them. And then you get the question of, well, do I want to work that hard?
Yeah.
Like, I think I could get there.
Right.
But is that worth it to me? Because I only have so much time and energy, and my energy is better spent over here.
I think I believe one of my superpowers, especially when I was in corporate world, is reading between the lines, the things that weren't said. And that is where perception versus reality is so important. Like most of your corporate career and potentially in life is like perception over reality or perception is reality.
For sure.
Like objectively, if something is a fact, but somebody else thinks something different, it doesn't matter. So I remember dealing with a very difficult boss who ran the company. And the management of him, I was reading between the lines because whatever he said was BS because he was just saying it because he was running the company. And so I was constantly trying to read between the lines to understand what he was perceiving so I could, in turn, either try and move a project along or try and get what I want or try to fix a problem. And I think that's a really important nuance too, is like, it's not always the spoken word. It's reading body language. It's reading maybe somebody didn't respond to an email. But I do think there's an important nuance there.
Absolutely. And so one is all these different signals, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to put yourself in someone else's head. So as a psychologist, like literally that's what my whole job. And the more we can put ourselves in other people's perspectives and heads, it gives us tremendous information to do a lot of things, right? To decide that person's insane, I don't want anything to do with them. Right. Or to say, now that I know how you think and I need to be influential and convince you, I can think of a different way to approach it. Again, when I use parenting as an analogy a lot in making the distinction between that and our work lives, because when you have multiple kids like you do and I do, they're all different. You spend your time trying to get into each of their heads to figure out, I got to convince you. I got to convince you all of the same
by
thing.
The way.
Right.
Where you're like, I thought I knew how to get into your head, but turns out.
Yeah. And then it changes.
Yeah.
But you say, I have the same goal with all of them, right? To whatever it is. But the way I have to go about doing it's going to be very different. And where does that start? With figuring out how they see the world. And if I just try to be the hammer and be like, I'm going to be the same way with each kid, it's not going to get results. We're very willing to do that with our kids and think it makes us brilliant, right? If I shift my parenting style from one to the other at home, I'm like, I nailed this. But if we do it at work, we think it makes us fake.
Oh my God, that's so fascinating.
Right? Because if I'm like one person with my boss and a different person with my colleague, like I wouldn't feel proud about that. I'd be like, oh, look at me, like I'm fake. But it's not fake. But
you're not being fake at home.
It's not fake. It is not fake to change the way you're showing up based on the audience you have, right? It's very strategic.
It's so interesting. I had this conversation on a previous episode where the woman was like, I don't want my kids to become chameleons. I don't want them to become the other person. But again, I think this is an important nuance. Is you don't want your daughter to become like Molly or whatever her name was. It's like, don't become those people that may not be as important. But I do think you have a really important point. It's like, it's okay to change how you show up with individual people.
That's right. But the distinction there is subtle. By the way, I really hope there's not actually a girl named Molly in the class because I think there is. No, I use that example because I don't think there's a Molly. But I'm like, oh my God, what if there was actually a Molly? And then there was like, she was talking bad about me. No, apologies to Molly. The distinction is I don't want you to lose who you are so that you can be pleasing to other people. But when we're parents and we're shifting, we're not losing who we are. We're like, I'm me. I've got like, I have advice to give. You need to listen.
These are my people. And you're not losing who you are because you're with your people.
That's right. And I'm just shifting how I'm going to get the best out of you. And so that, I think, is the distinction. Is I wouldn't want that for my kids either, to feel like I have to like lose who I am in order to be in a relationship, but to recognize that, hey, relationships have give and take. And sometimes I have to do something that's not maybe the way I would naturally do it, but what's going to enable me to achieve this goal, whether it's friendship or whether it's getting my kid to do their homework or whatever it is. And so helping people think through that. But I do feel like every mother who has multiple kids will be like, oh, I have a totally different parenting style with each kid. And they're really aware of it. They're proud of it. And when it works, they're like, yes. And then when you do it in a different environment, it's the same thing. And I think we should be equally proud of it, but we typically are not.
My mind's blown on that one because it is true. You spend like your whole corporate career trying to figure out your identity and your values in corporate life. And we talk about this a lot, is like your work life and your personal life just blend all the time. And I think that's an important lesson, is like leverage the superpowers of how you run your household and apply that to the workplace.
And I obviously, like, your work is not your family, but I often find for people that if they're struggling with how to handle a situation at work that involves people, if I ask them to think about how they would handle it in their personal life, they almost always have an insight that's the right answer for what they should do at work. And so for me, that's often a hack. Like, what would I do if this were a child or a friend or something? How would I be approaching it? It can make maybe more empathetic, a little bit softer in how I delivered something, maybe more willing to try something. So I find for me that people's instincts there in the personal domain are really helpful for thinking out how to navigate the tricky work stuff.
That's a good reminder. I'd like to see your breadwinner artifacts.
Oh.
What did you bring in?
Okay, one of them is my phone.
Okay.
Because I travel a tremendous amount for work. So call this remote parenting. But I also feel like when I think about like things that are hard for people, one of the books that I always recommend to people is Cal Newport's Deep Work. It's not a book written for women, but I think it has great implications for women, because it's talking about like the challenge of working deeply and being able to like concentrate and get in flow states. And I just feel like this is like all I do now, right? Is like constantly feel like I cannot be away from a device because this is how my kids will reach me. This is how I will parent. This is how I will stay connected to my personal life right now. And it's a huge interrupter to deep work, but I'm like, oh, I'm on the road. Like, what do I have? Like, where's all the pictures of my kids on my phone? Like, where's, what did I do? Like when I got up this morning and to head to the airport, like remote parent, all the things. Okay. So there's my very unsexy
It's a connector. It is there's all the negative aspects, but it is a connector.
All right. So then where is it? Okay. Here, I brought this. This is.
Oh my gosh. My husband and I have a story about this too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so hold that up to the camera for people to see.
Okay, this is my concierge key, American Airlines super secret status, metal tag, which goes on my luggage. Okay, what's your story? Tell me your story, and then I'll tell you mine.
So my husband and I met working together in advertising, and we would travel a lot. And he had medallion status.
Oh yeah.
So he had the same
Delta
medal, whatever, and he, for a long time, still had it on his bag because it reminded him of those moments, of that chapter in his life of traveling, and it stayed on the bag and it's just kept getting dinged up and bent. And there was a moment where he's like, I'm going to retire this because it's falling apart. But it was a status for him. It was a status symbol.
So I have this. So my husband and I both independently are concierge key, which I always say American Airlines should put us in a commercial because there cannot be that many husband-wife couples who have on their own independently traveled enough to be able to get it. And I have a very love-hate relationship with this thing, right? On one hand, yes, there's this idea that there's a status to it. Every time I travel, like everything is easier, but you only earn this from being away so much, right?
Yeah.
And so I have like so much of how like our lives function, my husband and mine, and thinking about these things and to like be a breadwinner and do all of this is like that I'm gone. And also, P.S., I hate to fly. Like almost phobic. So yet I'm obsessed with retaining my status to a thing that I could not enjoy doing less. But I'm like, well, if I'm gonna be a bear, be a grizzly bear, I guess.
So that to me feels like the false definition of status, which is just like this intangible thing of like I've reached this pinnacle.
That's right. So this is So this is not the like respect in someone else. Although, right, when something is a status symbol, so like you could say this is a status symbol, is that what do you get when you go through the airport with this on, you do get the respect of people. So the status symbol is not the underlying core status.
Sure.
But it's a way that people say, like when I went through, so we're in March right now. Women's History Month, I always say, is my Super Bowl, given the work that I do.
Yeah.
Last International Women's Day, I was in the Chicago airport where I live. And when you check into the Admirals Club, they take your boarding pass and then it pops up that you're a concierge key. And the woman at the desk, she fist bumped me. She goes, "I don't see any female keys." And she goes, "You go." So there was this like nod of respect. Like, so you think about that, right? This thing, which is a physical thing, and you could say someone is chasing the bad version of status. Why do people chase those things sometimes? It's because when other people see that, they take it as a cue, mainly on capability, right? That you've done something that's worthy.
Yeah.
And that's often why those things have value to people. So there is a link between a status symbol and the underlying respect, because sometimes, but it only works in certain domains, right?
Yes.
When you go somewhere else, everyone's like, what is this dinged up tag on your luggage? That's so dumb.
I think in some ways you feel like you've earned it.
Yeah.
So it's really about the self-pride that you have of like, that represents how hard you've worked.
Exactly. Yeah. So
I love that one. That might be one of my favorite artifacts that people have brought in.
Oh my gosh. Not that there's a competition, but I love winning.
I know. That's a really good one.
Oh, good. Okay. So the other one, I thought this was funny. So this is my Chanel fanny pack that is always comes with me when I travel. But two things. I wanted to laugh because even when I'm on the road, a fanny pack ends up being a mom bag. Like you ask any parent.
I'm like, what's in there?
Yeah, there's a baseball card in here. I was like, okay, I've got three things. I've got a wallet, AirPods, a lipstick, and a baseball card, because of course one would, even in a fanny pack.
Sure.
Everything's a mom bag. So I thought about this because one of the things I talk about status is that status is a resource, just like health is a resource and money is a resource. So what do I like to do with some of my discretionary money? Like, I like bags.
Yeah.
I buy bags. I for a while, right, started to feel somewhat apologetic, like that's what I like to do with my money. And like, was that being to the point, like statusy in the bad way? And over time, I started to realize, like, think about all of these things as a resource and that they're all very personal decisions. So to some of my money, the way I use it is like a portion of that goes to overpriced handbags.
Sure. It makes you feel good.
It does. But health is also a resource. But people want to use their health in different ways. So I just turned 50.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In May, I'm going to hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu with some friends. That was a bucket list thing for me. That was what I wanted to do with my health. But when I say to other friends who definitely care about their health as much as I do, they're like, leave me out. I will never do that. That sounds like the worst trip ever. Hard pass. So health is a resource, but people want to do different things with it. Money, same thing. Status is the same thing. It's a resource, meaning it sets you up to have good relationships. But what you want to do with that, it can be very different. And so just like everyone wants money and everyone wants health.
Yeah.
And I say everyone should want status because it's a good resource that then you can spend in a lot of different ways. You can spend it being a good advocate or ally and fighting for causes or people you believe in, right? You can spend it to advance your own career and create more opportunities for your own intellectual growth and your family. You can use your status in all these different ways, but it's just a resource that once you build it, you have to use it though. Because if you have your money and you just hide it under your mattress, or you like have your health and you don't go and do anything with it, it's not really that useful. It only becomes useful when you say, this is what I want to put it to use for. And so it's same is true for status. So to me, the handbags always represent the same idea of, oh, this is like the end product of what you wanted to do with this resource. And so women, in particular, we need to earn status, but we also have to be willing to spend it on things that matter, right? Whether that's, I want to fight for an idea, or I want to be able to go do something non-conventional with my life or my career. When you have the respect of your audience, you have the resource to be able to do those things, and we don't want to be scared to do that. So
I do wonder, oh my God, we're going to have a follow-up episode because this just opened up a whole other conversation around when people retire, they feel like they lose their sense of self because they spent their whole lives doing something, or like empty nesters when the kids leave. I think it comes back to this, it's status. It's status, and you've built this beautiful family, you've built a beautiful career, and then you retire. And it's like the reframing, so many reframings in this episode, but the reframing is spending it on things that matter. Take that status, maybe when you retire, and spend it on things that matter. Give back to the community, like whatever it is. Maybe I think that's why grandparenting maybe is so important for people. Like they love it so much because it's giving back.
Yeah. Or go build status in a new area that allows you to make an impact. Like go into the volunteer organization, go into the board service, go do whatever. And then you might have to like rebuild. So that's another thing I think is daunting for people is I had this corporate career where now my status in this organization was not in dispute. Everyone knew me and everyone respected me. But now like I go in, I was talking to my dad, had a friend, a retired surgeon. Being a surgeon was so critical to his identity. And then he was in like trying to volunteer in things where like low level medical stuff. And they were like, "Who are you?" Like old man walking in off the street. And it was like, you could see it was hurting his soul because he wasn't able to import his status.
His old status into a new status.
Correct. So sometimes we have to then go build it. It can feel daunting, but you've built it once so beautifully. And I would say you can build it again and think of other meaningful things you want to do. But the cautionary tale I would say to everyone who's listening who's not at that point is it's easier to build your status before you need it. So if you can look ahead and think, I'm not going to do this paid work forever. And when I don't stop doing paid work, what do I think I might like to do? Well, let me start building some status in those areas. Now, for a lot of women, for example, they'll talk to me about board service. Like when I'm not so busy with my job, I would love to sit on some boards. Great. We'll start making that known 5 years before you want to do it. Sure. So by the time you actually want to go build status in that domain, you're not a complete unknown having to start over. You've actually already have a little bit of a head start.
I felt that, sort of still feel that way, but I felt that way building Breadwinners. It's like I left a 20-year corporate career to go build this platform, and I was like, I am starting all over. And it was invigorating. It still is like it's invigorating in some ways, but it's also like, oh boy, I gotta earn respect and status in a whole new light.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was daunting. Yeah. Like in the early days, I was like, am I really going to do this by myself?
Yeah. And so if people have the luxury and they can hear your story and they're thinking, oh, I want to do something like that in a couple of years, what I would have told you if you had said that at that point or them is, we'll start laying some of the groundwork now. Yeah. Like, who would a couple of your first guests be? Like, what would you be doing? Like, who would you want to know about this? And so when you have a longer runway, it's not as daunting because then it's just a fun side project and you can start to build it. Because I always say that the best time to build your status is when you're new in a relationship and you don't need anything from anybody. Because then it's just fun.
Oh, what a great piece of sage advice, especially for teenagers. And like, I'm going to say that to my 19-year-old. That's a really good piece of advice. Yeah. Okay. I ask this question to all guests. You can answer it as it relates to the work that you've done or being a mom or both. But what legacy do you want to leave?
There's 3 things that are core characteristics for me. And I actually talk about this a little bit in the book. Being principled, being generous, and being humorous. So when I think about things that I would want people to remember about me or feel like they are better at doing because I was around, it would be one of those 3 things: principled, generous, and humorous. So, but it can take a variety of different forms in terms of like not one specific thing that I've built, but that's what people would think that I brought to their lives and into the world.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
I like that. The last bit is Breadwinner Bites, which are our rapid fire questions. Okay. What is the negotiation mistake women make most often?
Waiting too long.
This is why we need to have a follow-up episode because we didn't even talk about negotiation, and there's like a whole other topic on that. So you're coming back.
Okay, I'm coming back. Deal. You've heard it here first.
McKinsey or academia? Which made you more badass?
Academia. Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like academia is, unless you're in it, you don't really know like what goes on in academia.
I don't think the people who are in it knows what goes on. It's like nobody knows. Like it's a weird place. It's a weird place. But what I would say is it gave me like the science of my field. I just have found so profoundly important for how I live my life and being able to talk to other people. So that's why I answered the way I did. But academia is weird. It is weird.
Yeah. What's the fastest way to build status in a room full of people you don't know?
Listen to their story and find the smallest way to add value. So if you listen to someone talk for more than a couple seconds, you're going to hear things they care about. And what I always do is like my brain just goes like, okay, how could I be of service? Like even something they talk about something and I'll say, oh, have you read this book? Or I saw this really funny thing on social, whatever it is, the second you are of service like that, you lodge in their brain as a person who has value to offer and you're willing to do it for them. So I could give you hours of examples, but if you just talk to somebody for 5 minutes, I guarantee you a thought will occur to you of like, oh, I wonder if they know about this, or I could help them in this way, and do that. And you can do that in a room full of strangers in minutes.
It's the art of small talk.
Yeah. What I do is I just listen to what people are chatting about. And the idea is much better to hear what they are talking about than for you to just yammer on about your thing. Some of that can be useful because you can find the points of similarity. But when we listen to other people's stories, they give us all the clues. Like I always say, people are their own favorite subject. They will tell you anything you want to know if they think you care about the answer. And just listen and then think of some way to like add on or add value to what they're talking about. That's it.
I told this to my stepson when he went on his first date. Well, actually, it was before he went on his date. And I was like, how you know it's a good date is when the person talks the other time and you don't talk, because they're going to walk away thinking that was the best date ever because you're just asking them questions and they're talking about themselves. You know that they think it was a good date.
Absolutely. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Get people talking. And then you look for your moments to be like, oh, that me too, similarity.
Right.
And, oh, here's something that can build on that or add to that.
Yeah. I think your next book should be The Art of Small Talk.
Okay. Well, there is actually a good book on that, though, that everyone should read, which is by another one-L'd Alison. It's called Talk by Alison Woodbrooks, who's a Harvard professor.
I have so many books that I'm going to be linking in this show notes.
Yeah. She's amazing. So people should read Talk.
It's great. What's one word that describes the breadwinner mother of today?
The positive one I want is empowered. Like I make choices and choices have consequences, but I'm empowered to make choices.
That's awesome. That's a really nice one. That's what we hope happens here in this community.
Yeah.
It's like you feel empowered. There's a sense of agency, so you feel empowered to move things forward, to provide solutions, to, positively make an impact. Because it's so easy to kind of swirl in the victim mentality. And we think we can move society forward if we do it collectively.
Exactly. My negative one was going to be exhausted, but empowered. Well, and you can be all. You can be exhausted and empowered. Yes.
The last question I asked to all guests, what was the last text you sent to your husband? They're all hilarious. Oh my God. But you have to read it.
Okay. Oh, I'll tell you. I know exactly what it was. It was this morning, but I know. I'll give it to you exactly. The last one is literally till 6, which was the answer of when does the babysitter leave. But the one before that was the substantive one, which is put $2,000 into my bank account to pay these 2 sitters. And to that I got thumbs up. And he wrote, fine. We have this very weird system where somehow my Venmo and my bank account, my Zelle is attached to an account that has no money. And it's like a default account from when I was in college. But I set it up. And so now it has no actual source of revenue that goes into it. So every time I need to pay, and I'm the one who pays everyone, every time I have to pay, he's like doing these transfers. But I never want there to be more money sitting in it because I don't use it for much. And he's like, this is so inefficient. Like every time I do that, why are we still doing this? I'm like, I don't know, because I've already set it up this way. And if I switch it to like a regular account, then it feels like I could just be like the victim of some like massive financial fraud. Right. The fact that all these accounts are linked to this kind of ghost account that has no money, I'm like, what are you going to take, people?
I know the woman who runs Venmo, and I'm going to put you guys in touch so we can fix this problem.
Okay.
Alison, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
This was so fun. And we are definitely coming back for a second episode because there was half the stuff we didn't even talk about.
I love it.
Awesome. Thanks.